today a moment
Szanowni Państwo, witamy po przerwie.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome after the break. On our virtual stage, we've got a special guest. So, at your homes, you are just hosting Anne Applebaum, a staff writer for the Atlantic and Pulitzer Prize-winning historian. She's also a senior fellow on international affairs and Agora fellow in residence at the John Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, where she co-directs LSE Arena, a program on disinformation and 21st century propaganda. In a moment, we will see Dr. Kamiński, who works at the Politics Studies and Asian Studies at the University of Łódź. He is an assistant professor, and he also cooperates with the Liberté Foundation. Good evening. We have 45 minutes to talk about the election in the United States and about transatlantic relations after the election. But do we know who has won? Because people say different things. We know who has won. Biden has won. And really, it was a very clear victory as regards the general votes. He probably got additional 5-6 million votes. If in America we've got this electoral college, very strange system, and he has won 306 to 210 votes. So this is a very unique situation in which Trump doesn't want to recognize the result. He doesn't want to say that it will be Joe Biden who will be the next president. So this is a very strange moment for the States because we don't know how to treat it as something. Is this the coup d'etat, or is it something funny? Is this a cheat, a deception? It's a strange moment. I think that in a week's time we will have this situation clarified, but there are no doubts that Biden has won. and it was a clear victory. If we look from the European perspective at the victory of Biden and America after the presidency of Donald Trump, was Trump and his government incidental in the history of the United States? So we had this problematic ruling by Trump, and maybe after 4 years' time of Joe Biden being the president, we will have another Trump or the Trump himself. What we are witnessing now, it's like a game where Trump is pretending that he is still the president. We can also see that some of his party members support this position of Trump. Maybe they're not directly supporting Trump, but they are pretending that maybe Trump has won. So we've got a problem in the States not only about Trump, but with the Republican Party as such. It's not an ordinary Democratic Party anymore. This is a party that holds the features of authoritarian group, which refuses to respect the rules of the game in the United States. We can also say that we don't know whether they will follow the rules of the international game. So maybe it's worth asking what has happened with the Republican Party, because as I have read in your latest book, you have supported Republicans, and in 2008 you wrote a paper in which you wrote why you were not going to vote for John McCain. But something has happened with this party. So from the party of Ronald Reagan, from the party of the president who was talking about the shining city on the hill, about America that is to become a model to follow by the rest of the world, and then Trump, who said America first. So it's a completely different party. That's right, this is a completely different party. It all started in 2008. That was the election when Barack Obama won. He became the president, and a part of the Republican Party members had never accepted that Barack Obama was the president. So people were blaming him that he wasn't born in the United States. He was born in Africa, in Kenya. That's why he shouldn't be the president. So maybe it's quite obvious for Poles, because it's similar to the Smolensk myth in Poland. This is a completely fake theory, in which, however, is accepted by some of the peace voters. 25-30% of the Law and Justice Party voters support this. They also do not want to trust anything and anyone. So if we have a fake president, that means that the Congress, the White House, the media, the courts are lying. Everybody is lying. So it's the same as with the Smolensk myth in Poland. If you believe that President Kaczynski had been murdered by Russians and Donald Tusk, well, such people were very prone to have no trust to the system and to the political democracy. So we have a deficit of trust in the States. Now it's even broader than in the past, and Donald Trump exploited this shortage of trust to become the president, and now this is even broader and deeper than before. So we have very deep changes, and it's very important to the Europeans to understand this. It doesn't mean that all Americans have changed, that then NATO is going to be dissolved, that the United States will be an isolated country. Joe Biden represents this pro-European approach, pro-NATO approach. He wants to be involved in the international politics. but we have to remember that people who have views as Trump will be able to win maybe in 4 or 8 years' time. So it's high time to make sure that Europe is ready for this. What does it mean that Europe should be prepared? So we've got, from what you have said, it sounds that we've got 4-year window, 4 years to cooperate with the United States, with the president who is pro-European, who deems transatlantic relations very important. But maybe the situation will change. So what can we do? If it is up to you, and if you are going to identify 3 priorities for the European Union for the next 4 years of Joe Biden being the president, his authority, Democrats probably will not have majority in the Senate. So Biden will not have the full authority to be able to do as he wishes. What would be your advice for Europe? Firstly, Europe has to start thinking about Europe. Europe has to think of itself as the 3rd power of the world. So United States, China. So they represent a different world as regards values. So Europe has to acknowledge that Europe is this superpower. Europe also represents some values, and it will be able to defend these values. Well, it's a kind of a diplomatic problem. Europeans have to perceive themselves in this way. But there is also a harder problem. I have been of an opinion for quite a while that to guarantee the security of Europe, you need NATO. As a part of NATO, well, on the one hand, we should have NATO, but on the other, we should have European army that would protect the security of Europe, and this army would be able to defend Europe without involvement of the United States. I realize that now we are very far away of achieving such a status, and most Europeans do not think this way. But I think this is a very important role for Poland to promote this kind of thinking, this way of thinking in Europe, because, well, which countries will lose most? The United States? Maybe in 4 or 8 years' time, United States will not want to be involved in Europe. So it will be a part for Poland, a role for Poland, because Poland has borders with Eastern European countries. So Poland has to work on the European security and to start thinking in this way. I realize that Polish government now has a completely different opinion, but in the future, hopefully, young people, the opposition parties, hopefully, they will start taking this approach and to work to fulfill it. As regards policy approach towards Russia, do you think that it will be different when Biden is president? Because when Trump was president, his position was not so clear. Probably Trump became the president because, in a way, Russia helped him to get this position. When Trump was talking about Vladimir Putin, he was using the words that nobody in Europe would dare use such words when he was talking about Putin's power, authoritarian power in Russia. On the other hand, we have to remember blocking of the northern part of the gas pipe, which is against the Russian interests. So what the American politics should be towards Russia within the next 4 years? Politics in Russia when Trump was president was rather strange, because there were 2 or 3 different approaches. On the one hand side, there was this typical, classical Department of State supporting the independence of Ukraine, support to NATO, support to Poland. So, and Pentagon was also supported. So people who have worked for a long time for the American diplomacy, they would like to continue this American politics in Europe. Of course, they do not want to have the war with Russia. They realize that Russia is a threat to Europe, to the world. There was another approach. So Trump himself, he was very close to Putin. He probably had frequent meetings with Putin. Trump wanted to have a different kind of relations with Putin, more open relations, but even the fact that Putin promoted the election for Trump, Trump didn't want to show that he was close to Putin because he was afraid that people would be talking that he had some strange relations with Putin. Thirdly, the third political approach, America first. So there were some Trump supporters, Secretary of State Pompeo. They wanted to promote American business as the most important business. One of their target was that they wanted Europeans to buy gas from them. So it was treated like a game for power. They didn't want Russia. They wanted to make sure that as much American gas as possible be sold to Europe. So that's the game that has been played for quite a few years. I think that Biden's approach will be more credible, more reliable, better understood by people. Biden knows Russia very well. He knows Poland very well and Ukraine. He knows Ukraine. So absolutely, he will support. So Biden will try to recreate the feeling of unity, Western and democratic unity. He will try to build relations between Europe and America, maybe with Japan, South Korea. So he will want to link these democracies. I think that this will be a more clear message for people in future.
What about China? If I were to point out the common point for Biden and Trump, this was the politics towards China, perception of China as a threat. Do you see some room for cooperation with Europe in this respect? We hear that the West should face China together. Only then will we have an advantage and will be able to impose our rules of the game with China. China has been skillfully using the divisions between Europe and America. Do you think it's going to be one of Biden's priorities to work with Europe and to develop common politics, common policy? Well, I don't only think it is going to be like that. I know that it is going to be like that. Biden's people started to talk about it in private and in public. They do understand that China nowadays is the threat for the safety of democracy in Asia, but they also do understand that the trade balance has not been fair for many years and it needs to be changed. But with Trump, you have to remember that he liked talking to the Chinese dictator, and he was ready to. We need to remember that in January this year, when Xi Jinping said that everything was fine with coronavirus, there was no problem, Trump listened to him and believed him. Later, he was anti-China, but he was quite naive towards China. You rightly ask somebody. We need to remember that Trump lost an opportunity related to trade, to economy, in order to have one united common policy towards China and not everybody having their own one. Trump had a trade war with China, with Canada, with Europe. He wanted to fight with everybody. He completely failed to understand what the trade treaty means, and he made lots of mistakes. I know that Biden has a plan to speak openly to Europe in January 2021, perhaps. We want to work with you. We want to create common policy towards China. We are going to meet and discuss it in 3, 4, or 6 months' time. We are going to establish a common plan. They have already started talking about it, and we know it's going to happen. Trump's politics, where America is against everybody, against Europe, against Canada, against China, is over. And we will see an attempt to unite the West and the democratic world to share a common attitude, share a common politics towards China. Do you think that TTIP negotiated by the previous president, which was meant to be a great undertaking, awaited by many, do you think Biden would like to come back to the idea of creating a free trade zone between the USA and Europe? And do you think it is possible within a 4-year period, within one term of office? I don't know. I think it's going to be an argument inside the administration. Some people will be willing to do it, and some will not trust the trade treaties. I think that in both parties in the USA, we can see that the sentiments towards trade are not so positive. People are afraid that because of these treaties, our factories are going to lose. I'm not really sure whether he would be able to find as much enthusiasm as 10 years ago. When I was reading your book, the highlight of democracy, we can see an image of Europe, of Poland, of the United States, but you were telling one story, a story of divisions, the story of being exhausted with meritocracy, people who are driven by common sense. You mentioned the lie which used to be the seasoning in politics, and now it has turned into the main course. Is it so that Europe and the USA are experiencing the same political story? I'm not sure whether we can say that this is the same story, the same experience, but there are very similar sentiments and movements in Europe and the USA. It may sound strange because I am American and I live in Poland. However, I can see a lot of common aspects of the Republican Party and law and justice in Poland. The authoritarian, anti-democratic approach, which does not trust the media, does not trust facts, does not trust science or independent courts, can be seen in both countries. Similar feelings can be observed in other places of the world. An hour ago, I had a conversation with my colleague from Turkey, Alicia Fag. When she mentions Turkey, when she talks about the situation in Turkey, the same is true. There is only one party who perceives themselves as the patriots, while other parties are traitors or want to degrade the elites. This is what they share, disrespect towards the opposition, towards people who have different viewpoints. I don't know if this is the direction you want to follow in this conversation. However, I have to say that this is closely related to the changes we observe in the media. How people read about politics, what they actually know. They learn about politics through their smartphones. We can get a text message from an uncle in Chicago, then we read an advertisement, a shampoo advertisement, and then we listen about war in Asia and then election in the USA. How can we differentiate between what is important and not important, what is truth and what is not true? We also do have websites that publish their content in social media to divide us. They divide us into small groups, narrow groups, in which because in our groups we see and read what we want to see and read. If you are a rightist, you get more information and more posts by people sharing the same viewpoint. We lack common space. We lack the public sphere where we can talk on equal terms. Everybody can hear the same content and the same facts. Not only do we have different opinions, but we have different facts. This can be killing for democracy because we need to have common facts in order to solve the problems. Otherwise, we are going to have endless cultural war. This applies to Poland, USA, Turkey, and the Philippines, everywhere in the world. This is a problem common for Europe and the USA. The digital revolution, which is covering the USA, Europe, and completely changes the public discussion and the role of the media. So let me ask you the following question. What can we do about it? Your last book sounds quite pessimistic. Despite the fact that in the last part you try to end on a happier note or sound more pessimistic or more optimistic, not to leave the reader with this dark vision, we can sense the anxiety about the future. After the Democrats winning the election, which was like injection of optimism, are you also more optimistic? Can you share some ideas on what we can do together? Or most probably we have no will and we're helpless toward this situation. We are never helpless. We can always be driven by our will. I am a pessimist by nature. I was born like that. I am a natural born pessimist. I think it is not fair towards our children to be pessimistic. It's going to be their word in 20 or 30 years' time. And we must not say that it's over. I don't want to pretend that the problems we do have nowadays are not serious, because they are, but people can find solutions out of their goodwill. It seems to me it is possible to regulate social media and regulate the internet in order to make it helpful for democracy and not killing for democracy. But this is the topic for a longer and deeper discussion. It's not about censorship of the internet, but about finding the algorithms which, instead of promoting bad emotions, they would promote better conversations. It is technically possible. Or we can start talking who should be anonymous on the internet. Whether on Facebook or Twitter, should be obliged to reveal their name if they want to be promoted and heard. We know that people who speak anonymously are more aggressive, and we might start thinking how to control the internet so that it helps us rather than does harm. But it needs to be a project developed by many countries. Between Europe and the USA, I do hope that we'll find a moment in time to start deliberating on the issue. Such a conversation, such a dialogue has already started on the European level. It is possible that for the Europeans it is going to be easier, because Facebook, Google, Twitter or Amazon are not our companies. They are American companies who have a serious impact there. In Europe, they are foreign companies that sometimes do disturb. There is hope that Europe is going to develop better solutions and better conditions for us by reforming the internet. But it's going to be a long process, however, a problem to be solved. Do you really think that the states are able to force such companies as Facebook or Google to regulate the internet according to their visions? These are powerful actors who have budgets bigger than the states do have. Yes, that is why I don't say Poland, but I say Europe and the USA. I have a friend who works for a large financial company. She works for a bank, and she told me, look at what is happening in global finance. We have very rich and powerful companies competing with one another on the financial market. Everybody wants to cheat each other because this is their point, but still we managed to regulate the financial markets. It shows it is possible, but you need to be willing to do so. We know that Europe is able to force Google to pay tax. We are also able to use our competition law to tell them your influence is too high. You need to sell some of your businesses. And Europe has been doing it over and over again. It seems to me it is possible, but so far we have not struck a consensus on how to do it. I think it's possible. One more topic from your book. You mentioned your meeting with the former Prime Minister of Spain, Aznar. You write about him that he was an advocate of cooperation between Europe and the USA. Now, when you look at him, you see a man from a different world because there is no Atlantis ever since. Is it really so that in the USA, in Europe, there are no people for whom the transatlantic cooperation remains important? I do not remember the election in the USA, which was so interesting for Europe as the last election. There were people supporting Trump and Biden equally to how they supported Kaczynski and Tusk some years ago. So for Poles, it is equally important what is happening in the USA. What I wanted to say about Aznar is that his world, his vision of the world has finished. The automatic approach saying we are together with the Americans, people started to challenge it. It is important for the Poles. Why? Because for Spain, the problems of Poland's security and the issues of Belarus are not so interesting for them. War in Libya is important, or the North Africa is important for them. Nowadays, there is no common policy, security policy in Europe. Every country has its own vision and its own interest. I do hope that creating a common institution or European brigade could change the status quo. If for the Spanish it was important what was happening in Poland, and for the Poles it would be important what is happening in Spain, our continent could be stronger. Everybody follows a different attitude. We still have 5 minutes to go, and I would like to ask you the question which you certainly have answered hundreds of times, but let me ask you, what does the election in the USA mean for Poland? What can we expect from Biden as the president? Because the government seems to be afraid of what is going to happen. The politicians of the ruling party were not hiding their support for Trump. Can we expect that the American situation will affect Poland? It was not naive or stupid, but non-professional of the Polish government to show such a strong support for Trump, you must not rely on one party. It had always been possible that the Democrats would win, being so supportive for one party was highly unprofessional. I don't know what they expected, that Trump would be there forever. Biden knows Poland very well. He met several times with my husband, Radosław Sikorski, when he was the minister. Biden is well aware of the situation in Poland and in Hungary, so I'm expecting a different language, especially when it comes to the questions related to the rule of law. If Trump was disrespecting such questions, under Biden, it's going to come back as a category of interest. They're going to talk about it openly, and they would expect some proposals from the Polish government on how to come back to normality. Every attempt of the government to violate independent media would be noticed in the USA. We should definitely expect a different approach to Poland. The most important thing is that Biden's people treat Poland as a partner, as an ally. They do not express threats to Poland, but they want Poland to come back to the status of a democratic state and be a part of the transatlantic world. Does America have real political instruments to affect the Polish government? What should it look like in practice? Do you think these are going to be some informal is it going to be informal pressure exerted by the by the American ambassador in Poland, or perhaps some undertakings common with other member states? I have no idea. It's hard to say it for the time being, and this is not the priority. We have very bad situation with the pandemic, very bad economic situation, and other problems. So I don't think it's going to be treated as a priority. I simply would like to emphasize that we should expect a different mindset of Washington, and I do hope that the Polish government is ready for that. So you think they are going to change their Trump-supporting rhetoric? Just to start. Okay, the last question concerning Germany. Do you think that the deep conflict which we observed between Trump and Merkel, is it going to change, and what consequences can it have for Poland? The government of the Laurent Justice tried to win over it. We were emphasizing we were going to have for Trump and common initiatives. It has already changed. Biden already called Merkel, and as of the 20th of January, the Americans are going to cooperate with the French, with the Germans, and they're going to be major partners. I have no doubt about that. This is Biden's intuition, and people from his surroundings emphasize that. The first thing they would do would be large conferences devoted to how to create common policy towards China, common trade policy. this is going to be their priority related to foreign affairs. You are a natural-born pessimist, but we are ending on a happier note of a vision of transatlantic cooperation, which is beneficial for both parties. Thank you very much for this conversation. I would like to give the floor to Olga Brzezińska. Thank you very much for the latest news. We really like this optimistic note which you expressed at the end. And the last speaker will be Maria Peszek. We are going to be back in a quarter.